Good morning. I am Dan Kopp of Leading Like a Buffalo, coming to you live from a dreary morning here in the greater Madison area. And joining me as always is Ty Firsching. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ty Firsching, and I'm joining you from Entebbe, Uganda, Africa. And it is not so dreary here. The past weeks have been 80 and sunny the whole time. So, welcome to the summer.
Right on. Well, good to see you as always, Ty. And before we jump into today's topic, I want to remind those who are listening and or viewing that you are welcome to interact with us while we are broadcasting. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments box and we will do our best to answer them. If you're watching the replay, feel free to comment. If you have questions, we will do our best to answer them on air the following week. As always, you can contact us directly on LinkedIn, or you can go directly to our emails, which are scrolling at the bottom of the screen. You can contact me at dan@leadingbuffalo.com. You can contact Ty at tradeleadership.com. Additionally, if you'd like to check out all of our past content, jump over on YouTube, go to the Enhanced Leadership Project, and you can see all our previous episodes there. So today we are going to talk about how great leaders replace a leadership legacy. This is a very challenging situation that you may find yourself in or you're in right now. And there are some tactics to employ and some things to keep in mind as you progress. So to lead us off today, take it away, Ty.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. So, how great leaders replace a leadership legacy. Well, that opens up a whole bunch of can of worms, doesn't it? So, we have two. I think of it in two different ways. I go, you can replace a leadership legacy, meaning that the leadership style intact is the legacy of the company, or you can replace an icon who was the leader and you're replacing an individual and what that individual stood for, whether good or bad. If that person was a great leader or not, you're still replacing an icon. And there's a lot of activity that happens when you're doing that, and sometimes it can get very tumultuous. So with that respect, I'm going to focus on replacing the icon because I've had to do that before. And it was very difficult. I was I was hired to lead a team. And the person who had left that team, and I found out later left it for other reasons, that team adored him, would do anything for him. And the problem that I found out later was, well, first of all, how do you go into something and you know that the person ahead of you was adored by everyone? No matter what you do, they're going to be scrutinizing you as employees. They're going to be scrutinizing you. So the difficult part was to realize when I stepped in that it came to light to me that the reason his team adored him is because he had low standards. He did the bare minimum and he kept his people, I guess, happy in this realm of mediocrity because he didn't push him. He didn't. So, but his legacy was he was a great leader because he never got down on anybody. He never told people you can do better, you need to do better. So they loved him. And that was the hardest part. And the only the only thing that saved me at the beginning was the guy who was the CEO, the major CEO of the company. He told me, he goes, you're replacing somebody who's adored. He goes, they're going to hate you. He goes, no matter what, if you change anything, they're going to hate you. And he goes, just beware. And I'm like, but you hired me to go in to change things. He goes, yeah, but I'm just letting you know, if you do, they're going to hate you. So I was like, thank you. And it turns out he was right. I walked through the door and you could just feel it. You could feel the eyes, the intensity. Oh, here we go, And I was sitting there and I just went through the normal thing. I am not the person who was here before. I'm going to leave names out of it because they're still around. And we're going to do things a little different, but I'm going to try to respect everything that is in place. And I went through this whole process and I still it was horrible. The feeling you get when you're in a room of people, you know that they just want to tear you limb from limb. Okay, they may not say it, they may have that fake smile on it, but you can tell. And so the other thing I had to do at that point was do my research. And I didn't know until just a couple days before this was happening. And I didn't know the situation I was walking into, unfortunately, because things changed. I was hired for something else and I got thrust into this position, and it was okay. But I had to do the research and I had to be authentic because I still had my values. I know why I was brought in was to shake up things and to get things working and well, just to get things working at a higher level. But the way I do things is more aggressively than most people. And what I was told at the beginning, as I alluded to, was you can't go in and do that because they hate you already. And in my mind, I said, well, if they already hate me, why even try not to do it? And then I got to thinking, you could cross a lot of feathers and ruffle a lot of feathers. And so I did my research. Like the most important thing you can do when you step into a leadership position is do your research of the person you're replacing and the culture he had in place around him. Because when you do that, you can start integrating your leadership styles, your leadership ideas into what already existed instead of just scrubbing it clean and firing everybody and hiring new people, because there's all these things you could do, but they're good people. They were just never pushed. And so at that point, I'm replacing an icon, but I'm replacing not really a good icon. It was an icon of mediocrity, right? And I was replacing it, and I'm trying to raise the standards to elevate the team, the department. And it was a rough go for the first, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. It was rough. And then they started realizing, and one thing, I was always honest. I always told them I'm going to do this. And the one thing, and then I'm going to give it to you, Dan, because I think I just saw your light bulb go off. I know you have something to say. The one thing that got me was people went to go visit him at his other company that he was at. And when they went back to visit him, of course, he's like, oh, yeah, I heard about that guy, and I have never talked bad about the guy, but I know he talked bad about me. But the people that went to see him, it came back that at the company he was a lower level of standards than it was here. So his standards, even though low, were very high there. And then they realized, wait a minute. And they started putting two and two together and realized that they were living under a leadership style of low standards. Whereas I'm coming in and I had higher standards, and I'm not boasting. I just had higher standards where things should be. And they started to appreciate me a little bit more. And then as we started growing and as we started moving forward, they realized that we were actually getting stuff done, not just stuff, but cool stuff done. And we're starting to excel as a department. So, Dan, go ahead, because I know you have something to say.
I wrote down a lot of notes. The first thing I want to address is you were told by the CEO, just be careful. They love the person you're replacing. Great. That's great knowledge to have. I would hope beyond hope that the CEO, and this goes through any organization, regardless of the size, you've got somebody who hired that leader, right? Whether it's a first level leader and the mid-level managers hired it, or it's a C-suite executive and the board and the CEO hired it, or it's literally the CEO and the board hired. Somebody made that hiring decision with the forethought of, we need leadership change. So whoever made that decision to bring the new leader in to change the leadership approach, it was incumbent upon them to make sure the people who were being led knew that was the case. Our goal here is the hiring committee or the hiring decision makers. We are hiring somebody to change the direction we're going leadership wise, versus, oh, Ty, good luck. Oh, by the way, they don't really, they're not going to appreciate you because you're different and new and they really love the old guy. Good luck. Deuces, I'm out. It was incumbent upon that person to tell them. So keep that in mind, leaders. If you are seeking to change leadership and you hire somebody to do that, tell the people that's what you're doing. So it's not on the new person to come in and change it and to tell it, because they're, like Ty said, they're already going to be hated. Why add that? Oh, by the way, apparently have been told, but I'm here to change everything you've been doing. They're not going to want to hear that, but at least they've got some forewarning if that's what you come in to do. Also, I love the approach of, hey, I'm here, I'm new, things are going to change. You're aware of that or not, but this is we're going to change. Having said that, I always couch my approach to that, my introduction, in you don't trust me right now, and you're perfectly correct in not trusting me right now because I've done nothing to earn that trust. But conversely, I've done nothing to lose it either. So I'm at neutral right now. So I'm going to work diligently to prove to you that you can trust me and you can trust my leadership, because we're at neutral right now. I'm not wrong just because I replaced somebody, but we're at neutral and I need to make it positive. It's on my job as a leader. I've been in situations, I've coached people in this situation, and I've got a close friend who's been in this situation. I was hired as a CEO, and it became quite clear to me in our first meeting that I had with my board that they didn't trust my chair. Then I realized, pulling back the layers over the years, that the guy I replaced proved to them darn near on a weekly basis that he could not be trusted. So it took me 4 years, and we didn't start neutral. We started at a negative because it was a holdover and they had a bad taste in their mouth. So it took me 3 to 4 years to prove to my board that they could trust me. And I'd call them out on it. Like, hey, you guys are not trusting me again. And then they'd be a little sheepish and say, all right, we'll trust you, but we're cautious about this. And then eventually they just trusted everything I said and did, because I earned their trust. And then I would bring it up. Hey, board members, remember a couple of years ago when you didn't trust a word that came out of my mouth? They're like, oh yeah, we remember. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. So you got to trust. I have a close friend who replaced an icon, and Ty sort of touched on this. The icon he replaced, I knew personally because we worked in comparable positions in neighboring organizations, and he was not good. He was misogynistic. He was racist. He was an autocratic, domineering manager. He didn't lead, but he just had an iron fist. But what people were trained was, they knew him. They knew what to expect. So anybody replacing him was wrong because he wasn't the guy who was there for 29 years. So by default, my friend who went in and took that position and was hired by the people to the board to come in and change things, I don't think the board did a good job of setting up the people being led to recognize change was on the horizon. And my colleague was wrong from the get-go every time he opened his mouth, because despite how bad the other guy was, we at least knew where he was coming from and how he acted. And you're not him, therefore you're wrong. Right. So fast forward about 6-7 years, I was coaching a guy who had replaced another long-term tenured leader. In this case, the leader was exceptional. And every time we met, I had to remind him, just remember, you're replacing an icon. Regardless of how good you are or how different you are or how similar you are to the person you're replacing, you're wrong because you're not him in some people's minds. So just keep that in mind. It's not personal. It is situational. So keep that in mind, that you're not him, therefore you're wrong. Good, better, in between. That's just a fact. And that's the lens through which people are going to look. And unfortunately, what happens a lot when people do replace an icon, good or bad, there's a short tenure there. That next leader comes in for a short period, 1 to 5 years, and they're gone. Everybody sort of cleansed their palate of the first long tenured leader. Then they got over the change with the newer leader, reset, get that person out. And now we're ready to accept a new leader because, we've got the hangover from the icon gone. And now it's time to move on. So there are my initial thoughts on this topic. And Ty's right. It's good or bad. You can simply be wrong because you're not that person, good or bad. But remember, be upfront, acknowledge it, remind them you haven't done anything to lose their trust, and acknowledge you haven't done anything to gain their trust, and you're starting to neutral, and work your tail off to gain that trust and make an impact.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice for going into any leadership position, whether you replace an icon or not. That's sound advice. For me, it was like walking into a hostile environment. So there was this thing that Okay, I could give the trust thing. I did say I'm not him. We're going to do things a little bit different. That's a given because I'm a different person. I was honest with that respect. And then I kind of took that, we've talked about being a positional leader and being an influential leader. And there's sometimes where you got to be that positional leader. And at that point, they had to know that I am here, I am there, and I didn't give the trust speech. I just let my actions speak for, or my actions speak, and that trust was built over time. So over time, within 6 months, it was okay. We got it. We're going. We know what we're doing. You're okay. But still, if I hadn't researched after the fact to find out where this guy was and what he was doing, who his top people were. And, I looked at performance reports. Everybody had an A. There wasn't a person that had a B. There wasn't a person who had a C. You get what I'm saying? So everybody was high performing on everything. If that was true, the department would be the top department in the company. Because and so again, it's a standards issue. And so I had to go through, and when I did the first performance evaluations, I was like, oh, how do I start from there? And that's a whole nother topic. We could talk about how you do performance evaluations, because you have to be honest, but you have to be fair. So would it be fair to me to impose my standards on people 6 months after I've gotten there when their standards were perfectly fine before? No, it wouldn't be, because they all would have got really low marks. And so I had to explain to them, this is what we're doing. And that's when the trust started being built, because I didn't knock them for being the way they were groomed to be as leaders. Because everybody's a leader, but it's up to the leader above you to elevate you as a leader as well.
Right.
So that was just one of those learning curves that you can't really teach that. We do a good job of explaining it, but until you're in that position, you have to take all the available information you can, and you got to make the best possible decision on all the available information. And sometimes it works. More often, if you're honest and authentic, it's going to work. If you're subversive on, let me find out more information on this guy, and they know you're trying to dig up something, then it's not going to work. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One of the thoughts I had from your first time you were talking was you replaced somebody who was well liked, and you did your research, discovered that whatever. I want to challenge all leaders to consider that statement and that thought, because everybody wants to be liked. And if you say you don't care, you're kidding yourself, because no one wants to go to work 8+ hours a day and have negative vibes and thoughts and words coming towards them all day long. No one, despite what you may tell yourself, you're kidding yourself. But I want to challenge people who are listening to this to keep in mind that when like Ty did, he realized eventually that they liked him for the wrong reasons. I remember writing a letter of recommendation once for a colleague. I said, this person is well respected for his leadership skills and trusted by his people for the right reasons, not because he had low standards, not because he was a pushover, let people do what he wanted to do. He had high expectations for himself, high expectations for his people, and he helped them get there. And they adored him because of that. Speaking of expectations, Ty is correct in saying if you come in and you're changing the expectations, it is completely unfair and erroneous of you to say, all right, well, I'm evaluating on my new standards, despite what you were meeting standards before. Now they're different, and I'm going to evaluate you accordingly. No, you've got to reset the standard, literally, metaphorically, but you've got to reset it. All right, I'm new. I'm here to change things. We've covered that, whether the CEO told you or I reinforce it. I'm telling you now. But we need to talk about what the standards from this point forward are. And my job is to help you reach those standards. It isn't about, I'm going to give you a quarterly review and you haven't met my standards, even though I just changed them. You've got to be very upfront with your expectations and set your people up for success and help them reach those standards. It isn't about a gotcha moment. It's not about changing things and getting rid of people, because theoretically, and all of us do this, we work to the level of expectation that is around us, You may have been surrounded by superstars, and until you reset the bar to a higher level, you'll never know that. So you can't move the bar without telling them and then say, hey, you haven't met the bar, you're out. No, you tell them where the bar is, you help them get there, and 6 months later, maybe they're all right at that bar. I'm like, all right, well, hey, people are doing great. Let's raise it a little higher. And eventually you'll hit some people who top out, but you've got to help them get there. And by setting that example and setting that standard up front, here's what the expectations are, and we're in this together, people.
Yeah, I'm laughing, Dan, because I remember going. I'm recalling it because this was years ago. And I'm recalling how I did the evaluations, and it was likened to a sliding scale. You had this scale that, okay, this is where they are. And then I had my scale. This is where they should be. So I had to take these people that were where they are and measure it against mine, so they didn't get low marks. I had to have a sliding scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So everybody at that level on this met this quality level on mine. And so that way, when they understood that, I go, but we're going to be up here. Don't worry. But right now we're here. And so they understood that. So if we keep improving, your marks are going to be high still, and they're like, oh, okay, I got you. And they're, because a lot of times companies, they use those performance evaluations for promotions, for training opportunities, and a leader in any team that doesn't know that, you need to understand that performance evaluations are there for a measuring who gets to do what at times. And
Right.
It may not seem fair, but that's how they use it. So,
or conversely, if you're going, oh, we've got budget cuts, we got to get rid of 10% of the workforce. All right, let's look at those evaluations. Who are our bottom 10% performers? Pretty easy tool to use, and that it should be
especially in larger.
Yeah.
Sorry, especially in larger organizations.
Yeah, absolutely, and it should be that way. Why? I don't want to. This is not ageism, but I don't want to keep the veteran people if they're being outperformed by the less veteran people. You should have metrics in place to help you make those decisions. Who makes more money? Well, if the less veteran people are doing measurably better, they should make more money. Longevity is part of a compensation system, but it shouldn't be the only thing. So conversely, if you've got all your less veteran people outperforming all your veteran people, you have to have a discussion to get everybody up to the same level, or you start talking about which of these veteran employees are expendable, not because they're costing us more money, but because they're not good employees compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's where those evaluations come in, setting the standards, setting the expectations, and helping your people get there. And that's the true essence of a leader, helping people get to where they need to be, whether they realize it or not. That's what your job is, whether it's personal development or it's literally a tangible output in your company. When they're making widgets, you need to help them create the best widgets. That is your job as a leader. Period. Yeah, so any final thoughts on this topic, Ty, before I wrap it up?
No, I would just caution people when you do go in, and whether you're replacing a leadership legacy as in the leadership culture or a leadership legacy as an icon, that you do your research and you be authentic. And if you do those two things, if you know what you're talking about and you speak the truth of what you're talking about and what's going to happen, you're going to build that trust organically. It's not going to happen overnight, but you will build it. That's it.
Be open. Own everything you say and do. Own everything your team says and does, and be beyond reproach, and you will have success. All right. Well, we've been talking about how great leaders replace an icon, good or bad, and some tools that you can employ to do so. If you'd like to talk to us, learn more about what we do, join us in the Enhanced Leadership Project, you can contact me directly at dan@leadingbuffalo.com or ty@tradesecrets.com, and you can always contact us directly on LinkedIn as well. Remember, you can always jump over on YouTube, look at our prior content on the Enhanced Leadership Project channel. And as always, it's Ty and me. We're sitting around talking about leadership, and the great news is you can do it. Good luck.